Hello and welcome to the Punters Lounge podcast. This time we're going to look ahead to the anti-post football coupons, and who better to join me to look ahead to the EFL season than Gab Sutton. Hi Gab, how are you doing?
Hi, Darren. It's great to see you. How are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. We're going to look at the Championship first, and Leicester currently heads the betting at 4-1. Of course, they were relegated from the Premier League last season. It wasn't that long ago when they won the Premier League. How do you think they'll fare in the 23-24 season?
I think they look the strongest of the lot, Darren. I think what you've got in Jamie Vardy is an absolutely ruthless goal scorer. He's proven that at Premier League level. I certainly think he'll be that at Championship level. He might not have the same searing pace that he had 6 or 7 years ago, but I still think that he's going to be able to get ahead of defenders in tight distances, even at 36. So he's definitely one I think that's going to be very strong. Leicester have obviously brought in 78 million for the combined sales of James Maddison and Harvey Barnes, which combined with the parachute payments that they're going to receive as well, I think is more than enough to strengthen their squad, which they've already done with Harry Winks, who's going to bring that deep lying playmaking quality in midfield, Connor Cody, who's going to bring that leadership at the back, and Callum Doyle for that ball playing now. So really good additions for Leicester. Happy with their squad. Still think they need three or four more, but I'm happy to back them to win the Championship title this season.
Yeah, currently priced up at 4-1. They had the betting with Bet365. You mentioned the parachute payments. It's a huge advantage, isn't it, for teams that come down from the Premier League, the parachute payments?
Yeah, sure. I think that's definitely one thing that has made the Championship a little bit of a closed shop in some ways over recent years. But I also think that the relegated trio are going to have challenges that some of their divisional rivals aren't going to have as well, in the sense that they're going to have a lot of uncertainty over their key players. There's lots of players at Southampton, at Leicester, and at Leeds as well, where you think they're going to be absolutely brilliant in the Championship if they stay, but if they go, they're obviously going to give those clubs a lot of money. But I think that the uncertainty over which of those is going to happen, I don't think is always necessarily helpful, and sometimes that can lead to some sort of disjointed performances and possibly difficult results early in the campaign, and while they deal with that uncertainty, where other clubs maybe have a bit more continuity. But I think on balance, I think it's a massive advantage. So Leeds, Leicester, and Southampton will all feel like they should be challenging very strongly for that top two.
Yeah, we'll look at more in depth into Leeds and Southampton. Let's start with Leeds. Well, both teams currently priced up at 7-1 with Bet365. And Leeds obviously weren't far away from staying up last year.
No, I think what they've got though is over the last couple of years they've recruited for a manager in Jesse March who's very high pressing, big on sort of, so they've gone big on running stats. And what they've kind of ended up with a team is a team of athletes, and what Daniel Farker wants is a team of artists, because his style of football is very much about playing out from the back, and he wants technicians in midfield. I'm not sure Leeds have that yet. They've added Ethan Ampadu, which I think is an excellent signing, but I think they need more. And again, because of the delays to the takeover, they've not been able to get in the players they need. So I think we could have some disjointed performances from Leeds, but they've got a winger in Luis Sinistera who's been incredibly successful before in the Europa League, and I think has potential to be one of the best players in the Championship. So he's definitely one to look out for.
Yeah, and Southampton obviously had a real bad time of things in the Premier League. I guess obviously we mentioned the parachute payments, but if you have a bad year and you don't win many games, that's going to hinder you the next season because you've got that losing mentality, of course.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a worry with that. I think again I come back to it with Southampton. Romeo Lavia, I think, is very likely to leave. James Ward-Prowse will probably leave. From what I can gather, that's seeming like that's close to. But I think the big question for Southampton is Russ Martin, because as much as he's shown huge potential as a coach previously at MK Dons and Swansea City, he's not necessarily got those promotions or got those achievements on his CV. So he's kind of got this Southampton job and the Swansea job before that on style alone. And that's not necessarily ideal when he's going to be in a pressure cooker situation where he's got to
Yeah.
deliver results. There's no, aesthetic appeal is great, but it's not enough on its own. So I think that's the pressure with Ross Martin. Hopefully he can deliver, but Southampton are probably the ones that I'd be most worried about at this stage.
Yeah, right. We'll look ahead to the northeast. We'll go to because I know you quite like Middlesbrough and Sunderland to do
Mm.
well this season. Middlesbrough, of course, obviously. Well, I mean, both teams reached the playoffs last year. Middlesbrough only priced up at 10-1, and you think you think they're going to get promoted.
I think they're going to just miss out on the automatic promotion spots and finish in the playoffs because they found excellent form last season under Michael Carrick from the point he took charge and the point where Sheffield United kind of pulled away. It was sort of top two form for Middlesbrough under Carrick. So I think that they'll be thinking they can replicate that, having added to their squad. I still think there's question marks whether Seny Dieng can recover from a tough season at QPR and whether they can add the firepower they need up top are the two question marks. But I think they've got a very exciting squad that should go nicely again.
And Sunderland, who are priced up at 20-1 at the moment for the title, they're 13-2 to be promoted. Obviously, they just snuck into the playoffs last year. It was very tight, wasn't it, on the final day of the season? He was going to reach the playoff positions, and Sunderland, you think, can go well again?
Yeah, 13-2, I think, is a great price, Darren, because when you think about it, so much went against them last season. Firstly, they're a freshly promoted club. Very rarely do clubs just coming up reach the playoffs in the Championship first time round. They lost their manager, Alex Neil, very early on, replaced him with Tony Mowbray. They lost their two top goal scorers in Ross Stewart, who got injured, and then Ellis Sims was recalled by Everton. And then in the second half of the season, they had this just chaotic period where they had lots of injuries at the back. They had a makeshift defence and players playing out of position. Through all those things, Darren, they still managed to get into the playoffs. I think they've since strengthened. I think they've got a young squad that's only going to get better, and I don't think they're going to have as much go against them this time around. So, with all that in mind, I think they're a great bet for automatic promotion this season.
Yeah, so like I say, 20-1. If you think they can reach the top three each way, or even win it, but 13-2 to be promoted. We'll also take a look at Hull. Your dark horses for this season, aren't they?
Yeah, I really like them under Liam Rosenior. They're very much the hipsters tip, if you like. I think they only lost 6 games in 28 after Liam Rosenior took charge, which speaks to great foundations both in defence and in midfield. Adama Traore only played 9 games at the end of last season due to injury, but he's an excellent midfielder that's done brilliantly elsewhere across Europe. So he's someone who might go under the radar a bit this year. So I think if they can strengthen a little bit and add a couple of pieces of quality in the attack, like they have done with Liam Delap already, I think he could go well. I think Oster Estupinian is a poacher that could really catch fire as well. Alias Said Manesh. He's had a couple of years to adjust to English football after moving from across the continent. So I think there's lots of reasons to be excited about Hull, and one or two more attacking additions. I really think they could be ones to watch.
Yeah, they were only 15th last year, so obviously got up. But like you say, so sometimes it's about looking at when a new manager comes in, things can change at a
Mm.
club, and clearly they improved for Liam coming in.
Yeah, and the other thing is they finished 15th, but it was kind of top 10 form
Yeah,
under Liam Rosenior, whereas before that they had Shota Arveladze, and I feel like Liam Rosenior's made such an impact on the club with the way he communicates, the way he handles himself in the media, the relationship with the fans, and the impact he's made on the general atmosphere around the club. I feel like you can kind of strike off the form under Shota Arveladze, who
yeah,
didn't necessarily have that same connection. So I'm personally looking at Hull from the starting point of a top 10 side. And then if they can
yeah.
Liam Delap on loan from Man City, or if they can make the right improvements, I don't think it's a huge stretch to say that they could get into that top six with a fair win. So really excited about Hull. And Swansea, another one I should mention because I really like Michael Duff.
Yeah. I'll just mention the prices on Hull. So they are 7-2 to finish in the top six, 10-1 to be promoted, and 33-1 for the title. Yeah, you wanted to mention Swansea.
Yeah, Swansea. I think sometimes a great manager can make a huge difference. Darren and Michael Duff is someone who I've studied his work in the lower leagues over the last 5 years, and he's made history or massively exceeded expectation consistently. And I think when you see a manager that does that, you feel like, well, first of all, he's massively overdue a shot at the championship, but also I feel like he can make an enormous impact in it. Um, I think that he's possibly an upgrade on Russ Martin because he's got more of a solidified CV, if you like. I think he's got his teams playing good football, but they've also had a ruthless efficiency about them that maybe Swansea haven't had so much in recent seasons. So yeah, I really like Michael Duff. I think he's an excellent manager and could prove that with the Swans this season.
Yeah, Swansea 33-1 for the title, 9-1 to be promoted, 7-2 to finish in the top six. Obviously, very similar pricing to Hull. So they're the two massive prices that you think have got the potential to do very well this season. We'll just briefly touch on Coventry.
Sure.
Obviously, last year's playoff final losers to Luton. You think they're only going to finish about mid-table this year?
Yeah, I got them dropping down to 11th, which is a little bit of a surprise, I suppose, because I'm such a big fan of Mark Robbins and he's clearly done an absolutely extraordinary job. But I look at it, they're losing Victor Gyökeres, which is the most obvious thing because he's the best striker in the league. I think that's going to have a knock-on effect. Is Ellis Sims going to step up? We're going to find out. Gus Hamer, there's some uncertainty over him. They've lost a lot of loanees. Don't forget they had six on loan last season, so they've got to replace all those players. And there's a core of your Carl McFadzeans, your Jamie Allens, your Liam Kellys, your Matty Gordons, sort of players in the older bracket who have kind of mainly had histories in the lower leagues. Are they necessarily going to repeat what they've achieved before and hit those sort of top six standards? So a lot of question marks for me about Coventry. Huge amount of faith in Mark Robbins. I don't think they're going to drop off entirely and finish end up in a relegation battle or anything like that. But I do think that this could be a difficult campaign to negotiate, even with the new ownership. So I wouldn't be rushing to back them. I might think they might stay in the playoff mix, but I think they might just fall short.
Right, we're going to look ahead to the other end of the table now. Who's going to be relegated? And Sheffield Wednesday, of course, were the playoff winners from League One last season. They looked like they were going to get automatic promotion for a long way, but then their form really fell off the edge of the
Mm.
cliff. And obviously there was that playoff semi-final win, which obviously coming back from as far back as they did was pretty incredible, really. That they even made it to Wembley in the first place to get promoted.
Yeah, I think I was at Wembley for that 123rd minute winner from Josh Windass, and it felt like the euphoria of that moment and Darren Moore lifting the trophy to the biggest cheerer of the night. It felt like that that should have been a moment that marked a bit of stabilisation for Sheffield Wednesday in the Championship, and I feel like that's a missed opportunity for them because they what's happened since the falling out with Darren Moore, replacing him after promotion. I feel like that changes the atmosphere a little bit. I'm not sure how much I rate Xisco Munoz. I think this squad needs another 8, 10 additions if they want to stabilise in mid-table in the Championship. I'm not sure they're necessarily going to get that. So I'm worried about Sheffield Wednesday. I think they could be in trouble, and I think I might struggle to buy a pint in Yorkshire this season because I think a few of their
Yeah,
teams might be in trouble.
just go back to Sheffield Wednesday. When obviously I focus on non-league football, and when I see teams that get promoted, I, I think the teams that tend to struggle are those that stick with their old squad. I know there's that framework, oh, we give them a chance. They've won promotion, we'll give them a chance. But they're the ones that tend to struggle. They need to improve. And obviously, I don't know Sheffield Wednesday anywhere near as in depth as you do, but are you sort of suggesting that they're keeping faith with the players from League One more than signing players who are sort of ready for the Championship?
Yeah, I mean they've brought in Delgado, but who's supposed to be quite highly rated in Chile. But I'm a little bit worried that there's a core of 5 or 6 players that I think are good enough for the championship. Barry Bannon being one of them, but I also think they've got quite an aging squad as well. I think they need to dilute that with a bit of fresh exuberance, a bit of athleticism. I'm not sure they've quite done that to the extent they need to yet. Obviously, they've got another month or so of the window to go, so there is time for them. But I'm a little bit concerned about Wednesday, and I also think that when you're doing well at Hillsborough, it's great. I think when you're struggling at Hillsborough, that's where it can be a bit of a millstone as well. So that's kind of part of my thinking. Part of my
Yeah.
thinking too.
There's 7-2 to be relegated with Bet365. Now, there's two joint favourites. There's Plymouth, who we'll touch on a little bit later, but there's also Rotherham. That, like I said, they're both at 7-4, and I mean Rotherham have tended to struggle for quite a while now, haven't they, in the Championship.
Yeah, they have. They managed to stay up last season. They relied very heavily on goalkeeper Victor Johansson to do that. Cameron Humphreys in defence played a huge part as well, but Johansson was really their go-to man. And I think the big question is whether they can rely on him to the same extent this time around. I would suspect not as good a goalkeeper though he is, and that's where they've got to improve. I'm not sure they've done that enough so far this season. I'm worried about their lack of squad depth at the moment. I think, again, like I mentioned with Sheffield Wednesday, I think there's 5 or 6 players that are good enough for the Championship. And I think there's a lot of other areas of the squad that I'm a little bit concerned about. So I have my doubts about Rotherham.
Yeah, so there's 7-4 joint favourites, let's say. But Huddersfield, you think, are another team from Yorkshire again who could be in serious trouble. 3-1 to be relegated. They're 10-1 to finish bottom, and I think you think they are going to finish bottom. So that 10-1 looks quite a big price.
It's mainly a theory about Neil Warnock, Darren, because over the last 10 years, the bulk of Neil Warnock's best work has been taking over teams mid season and having a massive impact. Granted, there's the exception of Cardiff, where he did actually take them into the Premier League and did incredibly well. But mainly, I think at this stage of his career, it's been mid season turnarounds. And I'm not sure he can do an awful lot more than that at 74, because I think coming in for 15 games, using your experience, using your man management qualities to lift a group of players to keep them up. He can do that with his eyes closed. But giving a football club the massive rebuild that it needs, I think is a very different kettle of fish. I'm not sure he's got the stamina for the job at this stage of his career when, let's not forget, 18 months ago, he was planning all his, well, less than that even, he was planning all his tours and media work, and that was kind of what he wanted to do. He only came back into management as a favour to Dean Hoyle, who was the chairman he worked with in the mid 90s at Huddersfield. But I'm a little bit sceptical that he's necessarily got the drive to keep managing at this stage of his career. So I don't see that going well, and that's a massive part of why I feel Huddersfield are going down.
I guess I mean it's always tricky at this time of the season. I always look back to the National League campaign where Wrexham and Stockport finished first and second. And I mean, Wrexham kept Phil Parkinson, but Stockport changed their manager. And even when they changed their manager, they looked like they were so far behind. And Dave Chandler came in and he managed to get them to win the league in the end. And this is part of the problem when you look at early season or you look at the start of the season, you think, well, this is going to this is how it's going to pan out. I mean, Neil Warnock, if he's not doing so well, I guess he could leave, and that could change things.
It could, but then it would change things from the point of view of Huddersfield already being quite a way back,
Oh
I
yeah,
suppose, because they
I
would
suppose
have
Stockport and
perhaps.
Wrexham obviously slightly different, and obviously they had a lot of money, and then they were nearer the top than the bottom. But yeah, it's
Yeah, for sure. So that's kind of my concern for Huddersfield Town, and I also think it's a bit of a waste of a summer because you're giving it to Neil Warnock, and then if
yeah,
he leaves early in the campaign, then someone else has got to work with someone else's squad. So that's really the bulk of my concern for the Terriers.
yeah. So certainly 10-1 finish bottom, as I say, 3-1 to be relegated. We'll just touch briefly on Plymouth because they
Sure.
won League One last season. They're also the other joint favourites alongside Rotherham to be relegated. But you think they're going to be safe this year?
Absolutely, yeah. They're the smartest club, one of the smartest clubs in the Championship now. It no longer has Brighton, Brentford, and Luton. I think they're very much on that sort of trajectory. It's been very smooth sailing for the Pilgrims over the last 4 years, despite the sort of upheaval of losing their manager Ryan Lowe a couple of years ago. Stephen Schumacher's come in and done an excellent job, and I think that's partly because of the structure they've got. Simon Hallett is one of the best owners in English football. And then he's just got a brilliant group of people off the field like Andrew Parkinson, who's CEO, Director of Football Neil Dewsmith, and Jimmy Dickinson as head of recruitment. All those people just do incredible work, and many others, by the way. But that's why I've got a lot of faith in Plymouth Argyle, just because I trust them so much as a club. I think they're going to go into this level very nicely.
So if you're likening them to Brentford, Luton, Brighton, are you suggesting that 2, 3 years down the line we could be seeing Plymouth in the Premier League?
Yeah, not a million miles off. I think Luton certainly provide a lot of inspiration. Obviously, I think with Brighton it's a slightly different kettle of fish because they've got that bigger fan base. But I think the trajectory that they're on, they seem to recruit for a clear style of play. They're able to invest in potential a 4-year contract for Ballymumba, one of the most exciting talents in the EFL. He's committed his long-term future to Plymouth Argyle. I think that shows you he sees that this is a club on the right path. So I don't expect sort of fireworks from them this season. I think it's going to be a consolidation year, but I do expect continual progress, and hopefully they can get there over the next 4 or 5 years.
All right, so let's sum up. So your Championship champions for this year are
Leicester City.
Leicester City, priced up at 4-1, and then second and third.
Sunderland, I think, get automatic promotion, and Middlesbrough finish third.
Okay, so 13-2 Sunderland to get automatic promotion, and 20-1 each way as well for the outright. Obviously, going to offer some value even if they can't quite catch Leicester and they finish in the top three. And your two dark horses.
Dark horses are Swansea City and Hull City, both ones to watch, I think.
Yeah, both priced up at 7-2 to finish in the top six, and your relegated sides.
My relegated sides are all Yorkshire trio, Huddersfield Town, Sheffield Wednesday, and Rotherham United.
So Sheffield Wednesday 7-2 to be relegated, Huddersfield 3-1 to be relegated, Rotherham 7-4 to be relegated, Huddersfield also 10-1 to finish bottom. Right, I think that just about wraps up the Championship. We'll of course look ahead to League One and League Two in other podcasts. But thank you for now, Gabe.
Cheers.